Welcome back to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the most inspiring place on earth, right here in the great Canton, Ohio. My name is Jake Wright. I'm the Youth and Education Manager right here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we are super excited to have another great installment of our Before the Snap series today, featuring our special guest, the Southeast Area Scout. So you'll learn about it. He lives in Miami, down there on South Beach, but works for the Baltimore Ravens, Andrew Raphael, and we'll get to him on camera here in a second. But for all of those who have maybe watching this program for the first time, first we want to say thank you for giving some time to learn a little bit about all the different careers in and around the NFL, and that's exactly why we do this program for you. Is we want to showcase that there's more than being a player. There's more careers than just being a coach. There's so many different careers in and around the NFL that you can get into. So you can combine that passion, that thing you love to do in sports, and you can find yourself a career in that field. If you've watched us before and you're a returning guest, thank you so much for tuning back in. Like we said, you guys are in for another excellent program here from us at Canton, Ohio. Our mission here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. Those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence, all of which not only make our Hall of Famers on the football field, but it makes them Hall of Famers off the football field. Great parents, great sons, and great uncles, and great members of their community. And truly, these values can make an employee the best employee that they can be. So I'm super excited to see how these values have impacted not only Andrew's career, but truly everybody who works in the game of football and any sport. It's going to be kind of cool. You're going to hear these values kind of pop up in a lot of different answers. And it just goes to show how great the game of football is. Now, before we do get started, got a few thank yous I'd like to pass out for a few quick thank yous. So first, Andrew, our guest today, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of the program today. We know that the game of football isn't just a fall, now 17, 18-week job. It's a 365 a day throughout the entire year job. So we thank you for everything you've done for the game of football, and indirectly, truly, everything you've done for us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So first and foremost, thank you for that. Secondly, I'd like to thank our teachers, administrators, educators, professors, whoever it might be who either forwarded to their students, showing it in their classroom. We want to thank you guys for allowing us to be a small part of your learning experience. And then lastly, got to thank our students. Without you guys, this program doesn't take place. I always say nobody wants to hear me talk for a straight hour. We want to hear what you guys have to say. We want to hear your questions. So like we always do, first and foremost, let us know where you're watching from. Throw your school name, your mascot, whatever it might be. Throw that in there. Throw that in the comment section. We got to see how many schools we can get involved in this program today. We want to see all schools all across the country. So first and foremost, let us know where you're watching from. And if you have a question, don't be afraid to put it in the comment section. I can't ask a question. Nathan's not here today. He's out doing another program, but we've got Kara Kwasinski out there monitoring all of our Facebook questions. The only way she can ask your question is if you put it in the comment section. So let us know what your name is, the school you go to, and your question. And like we said, we do our best to see if we can make that part of the program here today. So without further ado, we are lucky and grateful to be joined by Andrew Raphael, who is the Southeast Area Scout for the Baltimore Ravens, who was named to that position following the 2016 NFL Draft. In his 8th year with the team, he covers schools from Florida to North Carolina, also spanning Tennessee and Alabama. So if you're an SEC fan, this guy has got your area covered. Now, it's a little tough for us here in Big Ten country, but if you're an SEC fan, Andrew's the one from the Ravens going to watch those schools play. He evaluated and graded 3 of the 5 Ravens first-round draft picks. Patrick Queen from LSU in 2019, Hayden Hurst, tight end, who now plays with the Falcons, but from South Carolina, the number 25 overall in 2018. Cornerback Marlon Humphrey, who went to Alabama, number 16th pick in 2017. After joining the Ravens in 2013, he handled a host of projects within the personnel department, such as evaluating practice squad players, organizing local college workouts, and assessing free agent prospects. He also assisted with many aspects of the draft process, which I'm sure we'll get into today, including helping coordinate the team's pre-draft visits, communicating the Ravens' selection to the league representative during the draft, and assisting player personnel coordinator with post-draft free agent signing process. He worked as a student assistant to the national recruiting coordinator at the University of Miami, the U, down there in Florida during the 2010 season and graduated with a dual degree in communication and sports administration from Miami. So with that, I am happy to welcome our special guest today, Andrew Raphael, to the program. Andrew, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me. Definitely very excited.
Yeah, I know we are excited. The NFL draft just wrapped up a few weeks ago. I know we're going to be talking about that program and that event here throughout the day today. But first and foremost, in this question, we start out with everybody here's scout, and they automatically kind of think, well, this is what this guy does, or this is what this girl does. But for you, Southeast area scout, kind of different because you're not located right there in Maryland, in Baltimore at the facility. You have your own place down there in Florida. So for you, what does the day-to-day life look like for a Southeast area scout or a scout in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what the time of year is. So for us as an area scout, it starts typically in August. We'll go to training camp for about a week to 10 days in Baltimore. And then we immediately break and hit the road. And from there till about Thanksgiving, we're on school visits consistently, just bouncing city to city, whatever college university it is, from, Alabama to Alabama A&M, or, Florida, Bethune-Cookman, wherever there's players, we're going to go hit practice, watch games, talk to as many people as possible, and put our reports together, for the higher ups based on how they are as people, what they, how they operate on day to day, and what they're like as players as well.
And I think you bring a good part, a good piece up there, because we talk about, evaluating player on the field. And when it comes down to it, the X's and O's, how good they are as a player is really the determining factor. But how important is that off the field aspect? Those characters, those values we talked about. When you're evaluating a player, is there anything that goes into looking at, hey, this guy gives back into his community, or he does a lot with nonprofits at his school? What is that, and how does that play into, a scouting report that you're going to give to the organization?
Oh, that's huge, especially for us in Baltimore. I mean, I'm lucky enough to be a part of the Ravens, who there's been a culture that was started here with Ozzie a long time before, I was here, and then Eric and Harbs, and everyone's just done a great job of cultivating that culture. And we're looking for people that are great fits, not just as players, but fit, our culture as people, and are going to be respectful. And, it's a job. It's not just a sport. So you're looking for guys who are, are pros already when they walk in the building and know how to operate in all aspects. So that off the field part is definitely a huge part of what we're looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because, you look at the game today and there's so much aspect of giving back and giving back to the community. And, you're looking for that guy who's not only going to leave an impact on the field, but off the field. We'd show a video, LaDainian Tomlinson talking about winning the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And he had this quote. I think it sums that up perfectly. He said, my career on the field, even though he's in the Hall of Fame, one day is going to fade away. But the impact he leaves in his community, that's what everybody's going to remember. So I really like that. That's a huge piece of what you look for when you're looking at players. And I mentioned those players in the beginning, hit on three pretty good ones: Patrick Queen, Hayden Hurst, Marlon Humphrey. So can you kind of just get into maybe what did those players, what stood out to them? Obviously being first round picks, they had to do something right, do something good. But what was it about those three that stood out to you? And is there kind of a relatable thing that each of them did, or you see in players that truly make them stand out amongst the huge pool of players that can be picked?
Yeah, the one thing I think we always say, I mean, is play like a Raven. That's guys who play fast, who are tough, competitive, consistent, week in to week out. And I mean, starting with Marlon, just his physicality, Hayden, his playmaking ability as a tight end, and then effort as a blocker. And then Patrick was just a young player who, played so fast in limited starts and was always flying around the field. And those are the traits that we look for, consistently as Ravens, guys that play fast, that play hard, and are just super competitive.
Now, for somebody, I know it's got to be a huge team effort, but someone that's personally involved in looking into that specific area of players, is there any special feeling, when a player hits like one of those three guys and it's like, all right, it did work out. The work I put in was worth it. Is there a special feeling for you when one of your guys that you scouted and evaluated, hits with the organization? And maybe not just the Ravens, but throughout any organization that they might end up with?
No, I mean, it's part of the job. Yeah. Any player that we bring in, there's never just one person to do the evaluation. It's a team effort between the scouts and the coaches. And once they put that Ravens uniform on, they're a part of our culture, they're ours. And you want to see them successful, no matter, what your opinion was, during the draft process. They put that Ravens uniform on, they're ready to go, and you want them to succeed. So it's just part of the job.
Oh, yeah, I think I kind of had a feeling that was going to be the direction that went. And we talk about the NFL draft, just completed here a few weeks ago. Every team is ready to go. Schedule just released this week. We're starting to get back into that football mindset. For you, though, what does that draft process look like for you? Is it a lot of work the week of the draft? Does a lot of the work you do kind of prepare everybody else for the drafts process? What does that event look like for you, and how are you involved throughout the entire, draft process?
By the time we get to April, and a lot of our work is pretty much done, and we're there to help, Eric and Ozzie and Coach Harbaugh really just, try to make the best decision for the team and answer any questions that we can, as whether it's, again, on field or off the field, whatever the question might be, we're kind of there to help answer it, because we meet so much throughout the year. We set the board, we rank the players, we give our opinions. By the time we get to April, everything's kind of in the books from our end. We hit pro days. There was no combine this year. The all-star games, and all of that is just a piece of the puzzle that they're trying to put together. And we're supposed to know our area, right? Know the players that we evaluate on and off field, and just give our opinions and give what we know based on all the the sources we've talked to at the schools.
You mentioned no combine, virtual thing. So that's a question, we like to focus in is, this last year has been insane. So much adjusting, so much creativity, so many new ways of doing things. So specifically, the pandemic affects everybody in some way. How did it affect you and your job, throughout all the travel that you probably had to do, and, evaluating players, watching film, meeting with people? How did the pandemic affect what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, just like everybody else, we had to adjust, especially because typically what we're doing is we're on the road and going to colleges week in and week out, day to day. And so it changed to Zoom meetings, right? Hours at a time, and meeting with people. You lose that personal interaction, people you may know for a long period of time. Now you're just on large Zoom meetings and waiting for the film to get in the system so you can do your evaluations from home. One of my favorite, parts of the job is being at practice and watch the intensity of a player and watch them move in person. So you lost that whole aspect, which was disappointing. But again, you adjust, you watch more film, go back to prior years, talk to more people, and do the best you can and just adjust.
Yeah, and I think that you said the key word there, adjusting and being able to adapt and overcome all these different, hurdles that are put in front of you throughout the season. So with that, I'm actually going to throw things out. I got Kara Kwasinski, a great teammate of mine here at the Hall of Fame, who's in our presentation center, in a separate part of the building, so we can be socially distant and everything. Make sure we're applying all the rules that we have here put in place. So I'm actually going to throw it out to her. She's got some questions that she wants to throw your way, Andrew. So Kara, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Yes, definitely, guys. Hopefully I can do justice to what Nate usually does in my position. But so a couple things that we have questions about right now is kind of, it's at least we're going to change gears and go into networking. So what advice would you give to young kids right now who want to kind of get into your position? How did you get there? And did anybody help you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, sports, especially football, is such a small world. Like, everyone seems to know each other. So the networking aspect of it is huge. I think the biggest thing is when you go and you start a job or an internship, you treat everybody the same, from the person who's the intern to the head coach, the general manager. You never know who down the road is going to end up where and how they're going to be able to help you out. And relationship building and networking is a huge part of what we do, and just how to be successful in this business in general. Keeping a relationship with the people you've met, whether it's, phone conversations throughout the year, text, email, whatever it is super helpful in general.
Definitely. I can understand that. Now, Um, Going back to school and different things like that, would you recommend grad school, or would you like what path would you recommend students to take to get to where you're at?
The biggest thing I think is just getting involved um, in the building, not necessarily like the type of degree, but the actual work of if you want to get involved in football, going to help out as a student assistant, trying to get an internship and get your foot in the door is the best possible thing you can do. The more actual like work experience you get to be a part of a team and kind of grow, the earlier you can do that, the better. So you kind of figure out what sport you want to get involved with right away, and just you can show up and see what they have available, or send an email, make a call, and see what kind of role they can give you as a student assistant or as an intern, and then try to grow from there, see what you enjoy to do.
Definitely. I think it kind of sounds like you like to keep your list of contacts, and everybody you meet, you definitely will keep a list. As soon as you get a phone number, you save it directly to your phone. I'd say you do that, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, in scouting, it's necessary because you're traveling so often and you're going school to school. You need that network. If I go into the academic building and talk to an academic advisor, or I meet a strength coach at one school, I mean, you're going to see those people over and over. So it's important to build that relationship, and that they can trust you and know, and you can trust them on their word when they tell you something about a player. You need to have that type of relationship.
Right, exactly. I could only imagine what your phone contact list looks like and how long you just scroll for. You're like, oh, that guy, and the stories you could tell with all of those people. But guys, remember, if you have a question for Andrew, just put it right down there in the Facebook chat or the Facebook comments, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. But I'm going to take this and throw it back to Jake in the Ed Pro studio.
All right. Yes. Thanks, Kara. And yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Could not imagine that phone contact list and how many people and past contacts and friends and players and coaches. And like you said, so many different people that you got to stay in contact with. But like you said, that's part of what you do. That's part of the thing that, going in and day out that you have to do. So I guess I want to kind of throw it back to the beginning a little bit. Scouting is a really interesting profession because it's not like I'm going to go to college, I'm going to major and be a scout for a professional sports team. There's not like I missed that on my major list when I went to college. I didn't never saw that. So for you, what let's talk a little bit about what did you major in college, and how did your experience you had there really kind of push you in that direction of scouting? Was it something you just kind of happened to stumble upon, or had it always been a dream of yours to be a scout?
Yeah, definitely something that I more stumbled upon like you. I think when you're in school, it's not just something that comes up. You don't like see business and then like scouting. It's just not really how it works in the curriculum. But getting involved again, I went to University of Miami and knew I wanted to work in sports and specifically football. And I showed up and was just did my best to get involved. And then, if you're lucky enough, I had coaches that took me under their wing and kind of taught me, and then you learn from there and develop on your own time, and watch as much film as you can and recruiting tape, and literally just kind of wear a lot of hats. Like it's recruiting and operations, dealing with the recruits and their parents, and official visits and camps, and literally everything and anything that they're willing to throw you as a student and get involved with. You just have to go and attack and make the most of it. And I think it's the experience that I got working for the Miami football team just as a student assistant that really kind of brought me down the road to scouting.
I think that's cool because I think most kind of stories are like that. You either grow up in the game, you're a fan of the game. I've been a fan of the game my entire life. Now I retired after high school. It just means, I wasn't good enough to play in college, but that fandom and loving the game never leaves. And if you truly love what you do, it really makes your profession, that much better. The cliche, you never work a day in your life if you really love what you do. So for you, why does Andrew Raphael love being a scout for the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I guess it's really just you want to be successful, you want to be great, and again, you don't want to let the team and the organization down. Like I said, it's a great culture, it's a great place to be in Baltimore, and being successful is important. And just being a part of the team means a lot, and having that your role and just want them to be great, really.
And that goes right in line with the game of football. I think it's very cool how, we use the game of football so much here at the Hall of Fame. We say we're unapologetically football. There's so many things out there that can teach great life lessons, but we're really focusing on the game of football itself. And, kind of going off of that, how do you use those life lessons that the game of football teaches? What are those life lessons that if you watch it, play it, coach it, scout it, whatever it might be, how you're involved in the game, what are those life lessons you think the game of football can teach those who are fans of it? And then how do you use those and apply them to your career, whether it be scouting, whether you're a cook, work in accounting, whatever it might be?
Yeah, I'd say just obviously the teamwork and communication on a day-to-day basis, the self-discipline that you need. I mean, nobody's ever bigger than the team. You have to build that work ethic and self-discipline to, think about others rather than yourself, and what that goes into the greater good of the team, the organization. It's not about one person, it's about all of us. And I think on a day-to-day basis, you really have to have that mentality, whether you're on or off field, to be successful.
Yeah. And I couldn't have said it better myself. Like I said, it's been 10 years since I've stepped on a football field and put the shoulder pads and the helmet on. And there are things I learned from the 7-8 years I played the game that I use every day in my life. So it does go to show. And we will say, like we say, we're going to talk a lot about football, but it truly goes for anything you like to do. You can learn those important life lessons that can truly make you, like we're talking today, the best employee that you can be. I just got a message from Kara. We've got a question in the chat. So we're going to throw it back out to her to ask our next student's question that we have tuned in right now.
Yes. So we have a question from, I believe it's Yvette from the University of Arizona. It's cool that they're watching from that side of the country, but she said she's currently a dietetic student and would love to work in the NFL as a team dietitian one day. What is the best way to go about getting her foot in the door with the NFL?
That's a great question. Just because it's a little bit different than what we do on the day-to-day, but I would say talk to the athletic trainer on staff, and then talk to maybe like the director of football operations on staff and see what their networks are. Again, that networking aspect is huge, and having contacts. I don't know that side of the industry as well, but there's people like the athletic trainers. And I mean, a lot of schools do have nutritionists on staff. So contacting those people and just sending an email, seeing who they know, getting tips and ideas from them could definitely be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what would you say kind of are what is the best kind of technology or app, or if you have do you have a specific networking platform that you like to use, or what would be best for the students watching to use?
Good question. I personally don't. I know a lot of people use LinkedIn. Maybe like Teamworks Online was one back in the day, but now it's just because we get so much interaction traveling and meeting these people in person all the time. I mean, mostly email, I would say, email and text when you get that contact, and just, keep those relationships alive.
Definitely. It's a lot of who you know and those connections that we keep talking about here on Before the Snap and in past programs. It's just like we talked about earlier too, just keeping your contacts going. But that's it right now, guys. Questions, we'll be happy to answer them. So I'm going to throw it back to Jake.
Yes, thanks, Kara. So I want to Andrew go back. We talked about getting into the scouting profession and how you kind of made your way into there. But I want to go back to high school. In high school, you're kind of just starting to get your feet wet and kind of see that kind of direction you want to take your life. So if you were talking to somebody in high school, and this even applies to students in college, because I know I really truly didn't know what I wanted to do until I was in, the back half of my college career. So for someone that really can't find that niche that they like, what is something that you would advise them to do, things to get involved in to make sure that they find the right career that fits them the best?
Yeah, I think you have to sit down and just think about what you're passionate about, right? Like what you enjoy to do on a day-to-day basis, and how can I turn that into a potential job? And, in high school, the good thing is you have a lot of free time to volunteer or intern, and try out as many different opportunities as you possibly can. I would say explore a lot of different fields and avenues as best you can. And, try to get internships, try to get volunteer opportunities in an industry that, excites you and that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I think that's very key. And it goes back to the idea of really loving what you do. And if you have a passion for something and you get to the golden opportunity to work in that, it's going to set you up the best. So we've talked a lot now, and we'll get back into it here towards the end about, getting a job in sports and getting your foot in the door. But I want to kind of go back into your career specifically. And one of the cool things I think about working in sports is, and I can speak for me, don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure I know the answer, is that you get to do some things that not a lot of people get to be a part of, and you get to be a part of these really cool events. So looking back on your career in sports, it could be the time you spent in college, the time you spent with the Ravens. Is there a specific event, a game, a moment that stands out to you as one of your favorites, or that stands alone as when you are 80 years old talking to your grandkids saying, I was there when, and then fill in the blank?
Again, that's such a hard question. It's all been so much fun because, like we're talking about, when you're passionate about this and just being a part of the team and the organization, like every draft meeting, any playoff game that we've had, and some of that stuff, the atmosphere at those games, like the goal is to win the Super Bowl. So when we've won the AFC North or, played in the playoffs, sometimes those things get minimalized. But I'd say like the nostalgia of walking out every training camp, because you think back to when, I know you're a Packers fan. For me, growing up in New York, my family would go to Giants training camp every summer when I was growing up. So then transitioning and then being a part of a team and a part of a staff and walking out on the field every training camp, I think that nostalgia is what hits me every time I'm out there in Baltimore. So I'd say that's probably the most meaningful experience every year.
Yeah, it's easy to say, there was a playoff game, the atmosphere. There was, the draft where my player got called that I have a great relationship with. So many great things, but I think, like you said, just being there and being able to be immersed. I always joke when I talk about my career, like every morning I walk into the building, I have to walk by a Lombardi trophy. And I'm like, how can you have a bad day when every morning you walk past the Lombardi trophy? So it is very cool, to kind of take a step back sometimes. And I think truly, sometimes you take it for granted and you really have to kind of take a step back, pull the blinders off and say, very grateful to be in the opportunity that I'm in. Going into your career a little more, when you talk about evaluating players, and we mentioned that this year was so tough because there's no combine, there's no in-person workouts. When you're evaluating somebody, would you rather sit there and be able to watch and rewind film for hours on end, or do you rather get there, see somebody in person, the things that they can do on and off the field?
Oh, really both. Definitely both. I can't give a percentage as to which is more important, or whether it's 60-40 or anything like that, but you definitely have to do both. And you can't I know it sounds corny, but you really can't watch enough film just to really get the full picture of the player and how they're going to help and how they're going to contribute. It's just such a major part of what we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And then you get into, actually evaluating the talent and looking at the players, putting a scouting report together, and it's going to kind of sound funny, but how much do you use outside sources? The Mel Kipers, the Todd McShays, and even Hall of Famer Gil Brandt, those people of the world. How do you utilize what they're saying about a player when you're putting a scouting report together?
Yeah, we really don't. I mean, our job is to form our own opinion. That's what we get, paid to do. And you don't want any outside noise affecting that. I mean, there's times, right? I mean, having the disagreements in meetings is what it's all about. And you want to have your own opinion. You're not trying to, read someone else's work and, take credit for it. It's what you think. It's what your opinion, how they're going to help our team. So we really don't focus on any of that.
That's very cool, because it's probably pretty easy to check a tweet out, watch a short video on somebody that you're trying to evaluate as well, to either give you a thought that you maybe didn't have or kind of give you that extra edge. But when, like you said, when it comes down to it, your job is to scout. And I think, like you said, taking that step back and realizing, I got a job to do. And there are these people that are on TV and do this for way more money than I make and are getting the notoriety. But like you said, you have a job to do. And when you can show up, pound the pavement, whatever that cliche saying you can come up with right now might be, you're there to do that. And I think we look at, today's society and things like social media and the internet, TV, cable, whatever it might be. There are so many different avenues out there, to help you become the best scout that you can be. So when you look at your career, how are you becoming the best scout day in and day out? Are there books you're reading? Are there trainings you're attending, conferences you're going to? What makes you the best scout that you can be?
Man, you guys really hit some good questions. Honestly, we're lucky because Eric, our GM, is so good at pushing us to be better constantly. And he's always coming up with new ways. We have like all different types of guest speakers. Like when we go back to Baltimore, not necessarily in draft meetings, but when we're there for training camp or veteran mini camp, and we're trying to help our communication skills, our writing skills, our evaluation skills. And he'll give us books, he'll give us documentaries to watch, just, certain clips that he came across of articles, like all different types of stuff to really push us to think of new ways to get better. I know it's kind of a broad answer, but we're lucky we have great leadership and guys who really, hone in on that consistently, whether it's writing skills, relationship building, all different types of things.
And I think that's another cool point. That's going to lead me into my next question here is that relationship between the GM, owner, coach with the entire staff. And, the normal question we ask is when we're talking to somebody on the business side, when that football side succeeds or that atmosphere that the football side creates, does that kind of bleed over into the entire organization? But for you, you work on the football side. How important it is for you to have that good of a relationship where, the GM kind of lets you do your thing and is watching over you and providing you ways to become the best that you can be. Is that something that makes the job even better? Or is it kind of like you kind of have that one, like the angel and the devil on your shoulder and you kind of always got somebody watching behind you? What is that like? What's the atmosphere like when you're working with that kind of relationship?
No, again, I'm going to go back to how lucky we are being in Baltimore, the amount of continuity there's been on that staff, from Ozzie and Eric, Joe Ortiz, Coach Harbaugh, guys who have been, there's so much trust because they've been together for 15, 20 plus years. And as we hire, like I started as an intern and you slowly work your way up, and there's a major trust factor as you grow in the organization that how to do your job, and we're going to try to find ways to make you better and push you and develop you. And so once you start to go, they really have a lot of trust and a lot of faith in what you do, which is amazing for, a scout.
And then along the same lines, when a team succeeds or when the football team wins, how does that impact the entire organization versus when there might be a tough loss or a big loss, a playoff loss, whatever it might be? How do those two different things impact the organization? Not only, the team itself, but the organization as a whole. Do you kind of feel that, even though you spend a lot of your time down there in the South? Do you feel that too when your team, when the Ravens go out there and don't play as well as they should?
Yeah, I mean, we're all super competitive, right? Anyone who works in sports is going to be super competitive, and it kills, especially immediately following a game, or you're super excited after a big win, but you immediately have to kind of go back to even very quickly because you can't get kind of caught up in too much. You try to keep things even as all time, especially when you're watching players after a win or a loss. A certain position or player might look better because this group didn't play well or this group did. And you kind of really want to keep things even keel at all time to make your, what you're doing out on the road, make sure it makes a lot more sense. You're not letting just what happened that day affect your thought process.
I think that's cool. And, you have a very unique job to where everybody's showing up to the facility every day. They've got a certain role that they do on game day and they do that week in and week out. Your weeks could look totally different depending on where you are at throughout the country. So how important is it for you to balance that, all right, Sunday 1:00 kickoff's coming up. I got to make sure I'm in front of something where I can watch the game. You're working with the ownership and the football side when you're traveling all throughout the country, but you still got people you got to go scout. How do you balance that? And is it tough sometimes when you're traveling, 80% of the calendar year?
No, that time management piece and the self-discipline being on the road is huge. We set uh, our schedules in August when schools give us their practice schedules throughout the year. And so we kind of have it mapped out immediately. Okay, what week where you're going to be and when. And on a Sunday, I'll go into a school in the morning and then leave to watch our game and then come back and finish up what I need to do. Luckily, Sunday for college, most of those guys, they just played. So they might have a light walkthrough practice. They're watching the film from the day prior. There's really not a ton going on in the building for most colleges on a Sunday. So it's pretty lax as far as you want to come in and whenever you want, get whatever you need to do. And it ends up working out. But yeah, you definitely have to stay pretty structured on the road.
Yeah, I think time management, that's one of those things that, it's kind of those cliche, what do you need to do to have a career? And it's, well, you got to be a good time manager. But, yeah, I think that's a prime example of how important it truly is. And, setting the schedule. All right, I know where I'm going to be week 1, 2, and 3. Here's where we play. Here's the people I'm looking at. That's very important to set up for sure. I know I got some more questions, but I want to throw it back out to Kara, who I know she's got some questions she wants to ask you as well before we wrap up here. So I'm going to throw it back out to Kara here for a few more questions.
Thanks, Jake. So I'm just going to go back to what you guys were just talking about. I know you touched on it a little bit, but you were speaking about what days look like for you. I know we can't just ask what does a typical day look like for you, because I'm sure it's always different, but what does a typical week look like for you? Or within being a scout, what does a typical month look like for you, since I feel like every day can kind of be different?
Yeah, so I'll start and we'll say we're in August and I'm hitting different training camp practices throughout college. You're going to map it out. So your travel schedule, you don't want to be driving 8, 10, 12 hours at a time. And so Monday through Sunday, let's say I'm starting at home at, University of Miami. I might hit Miami on Monday, Florida International on Tuesday, Florida Atlantic on Wednesday, drive up to Gainesville. From Gainesville, maybe hit Central Florida, and then might hike up to Florida State. And you're really just kind of mapping a pattern depending on what what state you're in, and hitting as many schools as you can and as many practices as you can in a week. So it's a lot of travel.
Definitely.
A lot of Marriott points for sure.
That's always a benefit when you travel a lot with different jobs. But since you do travel a lot and since you do have a very busy schedule, what motivates you? What motivates you to keep traveling and to keep visiting all those schools for you personally?
Yeah, again, being competitive, just wanting to succeed and do well. And, once you're a part of this, it really sucks you in, and you want to do great for the team and for Eric and Coach Harbaugh and Ozzie and Steve Bisciotti, and you want to win and help build a winning team. There's something really fun to be able to be a part of that and be a part of the culture. And you don't want to let any of those guys down, any of the people you work with, any of the players on the team, the fans. So it's definitely very, very prideful.
No, I know Jake and I can both attest to that, because our team is small but mighty here, and you always, always, always want to strive to do the best for your team, not just your personal team that you work with, but like us with Jake, I work with Ed Pro and I'm on Hoff Productions, but I still want all of us within the Pro Football Hall of Fame to succeed. So now going off of that, I want to ask, what secrets do you have to success?
Secrets to success. I think communication skills are very important. Like we talked about, self-discipline, staying humble. Communication is such a big part of what we do between staff when you're out on the road, and learning how to communicate, learning how to do it respectfully, being accountable. All of those keys are definitely big.
Definitely, especially working with a team. You can't just shut down and do your own thing. You have to really communicate and work with everybody. So, but I'm going to throw it back to Jake so he can finish up with some of his questions and wrap this program up.
All right. Thanks, Kara. Yeah, and I like to touch on, she actually stole my question, my secrets to success question. But I kind of want to bounce off of that. You mentioned some of those, kind of those words that you put on a resume or you hear in an interview that do help you make you the best person that you can be. But, looking at those, what is something that would separate somebody apart from others? We've talked about time management, communication. Is there a certain thing that when you look at a resume or you go through a hiring process that you try to do to separate yourself or see how others can separate them, from that huge stack of resumes that are going to be coming in?
Yeah, I think sometimes when we get into a job, we get into a routine and you set that structure. But then there's also ways to, I think, pushing yourself to think outside the box and find ways that might make what you guys are doing as a whole better. Think of new ideas and then being comfortable in communicating them to a higher up. Hey, I think if we do this, we could be successful. Hey, do you mind if I try this? And luckily we're in a place in Baltimore where having those ideas and having those thoughts and thinking outside the box, that's not something, if you speak up, you're never going to get reprimanded for that. They're going to listen to what you say and try to run with whatever idea you have, if they're on the same page. So it's pretty cool.
I think confidence goes a lot with that, because you can imagine being an intern, first or second year person in the organization. You're kind of still got a little reservation about speaking up and saying an idea. You might be telling somebody on the side who then goes and tells your idea, then gets all the credit, obviously. But that's a whole nother story we can talk about. But what is it like, and how do you overcome that reservation? To start speaking your mind and throwing ideas out there, because ultimately the goal of the team, whoever in the meeting, the entire organization, is to make the team and make the organization better. So how do you kind of get through that nervousness and that reservation to start, speaking up and truly making a difference?
I think it's just something that comes with time as you feel comfortable. And again, like communicating, I'll say respectfully and understanding where you stand in the chain of command. And when you come up with something, I think you'll know when the time's right, whether, if you feel like it can make an impact, you have a relationship with someone that you can forward that idea to. I think it's really just more time and comfort. And, when you've been somewhere for a good might not want to walk in day one and start knocking down doors, but over time, feeling comfortable with the people you work with and building that trust factor that we talked about, you'll kind of know when it's right.
We've talked about that. We've mentioned time management, and you get to do so much travel. Granted, it's in one little subsection of the country, but still you're on the road a very long time. So how do you maintain that work-life balance? It's very, very important to kind of have life outside of work. So for somebody who's on the road so much, different hotels, different cities all throughout the year, how do you maintain that work-life balance, and some tips to make sure you're taking some time for yourself?
A lot of supportive family and friends for sure. And yeah, luckily, you have fun with what you do. And we're kind of like teachers where what your schedule is going to be like throughout the year. When you're going to have free time. When you set your schedule in August, what weekends and like where you're going to be able to have some flexibility. So again, it just comes back to time management, and it can be stressful, especially during the year. And you make the most of it when you get a weekend. Do something that you enjoy, if it's an evening, whatever it is, and you just make the most of whatever free time you have.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's the easiest way to put it. Got time for a few more questions here. Got a couple ones, and I want to kind of talk about that travel a little bit. Got a couple kind of fun questions I want to ask you about your travel and all the travel you get to do. But the first one here, looking down the road, so 10, 20 years from now, where do you want to end up? Are you happy being a scout? Is the scouting profession, once you get there, you are the scout that's over that, and it kind of stays that way until it's time to call it a career? What are the career aspirations, and what is that peak mountaintop goal career that you want to have one day before you call it quits?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing we're striving for is a Super Bowl. Is more important than any title or anything right now. It's just being a part of the Ravens and the organization is a dream come true, and it's been so much fun. And we want to win really badly, and we definitely want a Super Bowl sooner than later. And the rest of it will just work itself out. Not that sometimes, people ask that question, it really doesn't even it doesn't matter. I just want to be a part of this organization for as long as possible and win as many games as possible is the most important thing to me, honestly.
And I think that really truly speaks to the organization right there, because you're going to get people to say, well, I want to be the GM and I want to be this and that. And but you're like you said, you know, we've talked so much about kind of taking those blinders off and stepping back and truly feeling what you're a part of. And I think that answer right there speaks so greatly towards what the organization believes in, what you believe in as a person. And I think that's very, very cool. Did mention some questions. So obviously you get to do a lot of travel. So I got to say, favorite city outside of, you know, Baltimore and where you live there in Florida, favorite city or college campus to go to when you're on the road?
Oh man, I can give you a few. I mean, Alabama. Alabama is always great. You know, Ozzy's got all those connections. So when you walk in with the Ravens logo, you know, they immediately take to you pretty well. They also always have great talent, and Tuscaloosa is, you know, underrated college town in my opinion. LSU is always a lot of fun. They have, you know, great facilities, such a good football town. Vanderbilt, throw that one out there because Nashville. So that's always a good town. Try to get a hot chicken sandwich when you're there. I'd say those are probably the top three.
All right. I will say, you know, and it's going to be a little biased. None of them compared to Columbus. So if you ever get the time to come up here, check out Columbus. Highly suggest you do that. But so that kind of leads me into my next one. You know, when we travel, we always get to try to find those local food spots that only the locals know about and try the good food. So every city wins. So favorite restaurant that you've been to throughout your travel times. If you can narrow it down to one or two, what's that one you're like, all right, I'm going to be in Baton Rouge. I got to go to this restaurant. Or I'm going to be in Tuscaloosa. I got to go here. What is that for you?
I would say Chuck's in Tuscaloosa, Chuck's Fish House. I think there's a few of them throughout Alabama and even Georgia. That's a typically I'm going there with somebody on staff, and we're going to enjoy a dinner there at Chuck's.
Awesome. Well, I wrote that down. We're going to keep that note here. Make sure we hit that place up if I ever do get the chance to be down there in Tuscaloosa. So just a fun few questions, but we're going to kind of turn things back to the serious note here, and we're going to wrap things up. And for the viewers, if you've seen this program before, you know what I'm going to ask. And so we've talked about so much cool stuff today, tips and tricks, what your career is like, all the travel you get to do, how important it is to have the work-life balance and time management skills. But if you could leave everybody watching today with one piece of advice that we talked about today, you maybe haven't mentioned, what is that one piece of advice you want everybody to kind of walk away and remember?
Oh, wow. I would say don't be afraid to get outside your comfort zone, and don't be afraid to try to get involved. Find what you're passionate about, like we talked about, whatever sport, whatever organization that is, and do your best to try to get involved, even if they're asking you to come in and take out the trash every day. You know, there's whatever you have to do to get your foot in the door and get started and grow from there. You know, push yourself past your comfort zone and just try to get involved as much as you can.
Can't think of a better way to wrap up this installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series today, featuring the Southeast Area Scout for the Baltimore Ravens, Andrew Raphael. Andrew, again, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. We greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us and talk about your career. So from myself, Kara, Nathan, and Jerry in our department here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, thank you so much for being a part of the program today.
Thank you guys for having me. Had a lot of fun.
Now, before we go, just make sure you're tuned into all of our great content here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I'll plug the Baltimore Ravens as well. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, whatever it might be, to stay up to date with all the great stuff coming out. We know the NFL season is going to be here before we know it. Big schedule release this week. Was so cool to see how all the different teams release their schedules on social media. So make sure you follow, like, subscribe, whatever it might be, to everything here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, as well as the Baltimore Ravens. And stay tuned. We got only two more before the Snap programs left this school year. And we cannot wait to interview our special guest. Next week, we have Craig Peters, who is a writer for the Minnesota Vikings, on the program. And then last week, we're going to end with Andrew's teammate from the Baltimore Ravens, Jordan Johnson, who works in their community relations and events department. So two great programs to end the school year with. And as we said at the beginning, you know, the game of football wouldn't be like it is today without our Hall of Famers influence. And that goes for everybody who has spent a minute as an employee of an NFL organization as well. The game would not be like it is today without Andrew's influence. So thank you, Andrew, for everything you do for the game. Thank you for everything you do for us here indirectly at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And truly, thank you for being a part of the program.
Thank you, guys.
No problem. All right, everybody tuned in. Thank you so much for watching today. And we'll see you next week right here on the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Facebook page for the Before the Snap series. Thank you, everybody.